everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Margaret Mueller. I'm the president and the CEO of the Executives Club of Chicago. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here with us this evening. I want to take a moment to thank our presenting sponsor and generous host, Accenture. We're so thrilled to be with you in your brand new space today. Accenture has long been one of the club's biggest partners in support of our mission to connect and grow Chicago's business community. Some of you don't know that the club went through a rebranding process and we redid our brand vision and our values, and today's program is the absolute culmination of all of that work. I was reflecting on this. So our core values are to nurture relationships, to be inclusive, to foster world-class knowledge, to grow Chicago's future, and a belief that business is a pillar of society. And these values are precisely what we're going to be discussing. So it's no surprise that two of the panelists are also on our board, Roger and Maurice. And so thank you so much for your leadership and service. And we also have several of our board members here today, and we're so glad that you're here with us. Thank you. I also want to thank all of the season sponsors that make our programming possible. You have a QR code on your program. There's a digital program if you want more information. We have a lot of companies in Chicago that support what we do, and we could not do it without them. And so please check them out. Thank you to all of our season sponsors. So there's a digital version of the brochure. There's also a way that you could submit questions to Mayor Lightfoot and our speakers, and I think she's on it. She wants to get your questions, so that'll be fire away. And we also have a lot of programs coming up that you can check out there. So thank you again for joining us. I'm now going to turn it over to Beth Marion, who's the Senior Managing Director at Accenture, and our host for tonight. She's going to introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Margaret, and welcome to all of you. As Margaret mentioned, I'm Beth Marion, Senior Managing Director at Accenture, and our new Office Managing Director for Chicago. So welcome to our space. I am thrilled to welcome you all here today to the Accenture Tower. We're going to have a discussion on the future of Chicago's economy and how the public and private sectors can collaborate to drive growth. The panel will address the importance of investing both in our central business district and our 77 neighborhoods, with a special focus on leaders who have spearheaded innovative pro-Chicago business decisions over the past few years. Our speakers for this evening's program include Roger Hochschild, President and CEO of Discover, Karen Sauter, President of Global Client and Agency Solutions at Google, and Maurice Smith, President and CEO of Healthcare Services Corporation. Tonight's conversation will be moderated by Mayor Lori Lightfoot, our 56th mayor of Chicago. I know we're all very excited for the conversation to begin. So with that, Mayor Lightfoot, thank you for your leadership and for facilitating tonight's discussion. And with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think it's still afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. Let me thank first Margaret and the folks at the Executive Club for hosting, I think, this important conversation, and also for Accenture. I feel like I'm here every couple weeks, so I'm going to pick out my favorite mug at the coffee shop and maybe a cocktail later. But thank you all for really your leadership and what you do to make Chicago such an incredible city, and thank you to our CEOs who are here. I'll let them tell their story a little bit, but I think each of them have a very interesting story to tell about why they are betting on Chicago. But let me set the table by giving, I think, a few important statistics for folks who may not be so acquainted with what progress that we've made in the most diverse economy in the country. This year alone, we've had 131 companies make what we call pro-Chicago decisions. That's either coming to Chicago from elsewhere or substantially expanding their footprint in our city. So we've had 90 corporate expansions in Chicago just this year in 2022, 41 corporate relocations, and 24 of those have been in Invest Southwest corridors. So we're very, very pleased with that progress. A recent report by the Illinois Economic Policy Institute said that the state of Illinois in the second quarter of this year became, for the first time in our history, a $1 trillion economy, which is a big accomplishment. And yes, folks, Chicago is the reason for that. 75% of the state's economic power comes from Chicago and Chicagoland, and I'm a big fan of regionalism. We have spent a lot of time making sure that we cultivate our regional partners because we have so many things in common, from transportation to the environment. So Chicagoland is driving Illinois, and really, if you look at the statistics that were in this report, our economy in this year has grown faster than that of Iowa, Indiana, Wisconsin, Kentucky, or Missouri. We are driving economic growth in the Midwest. Make no mistake about it. Chicagoland is really where it's at. And we're still seeing, last year we saw $9 billion in growth capital, and we're still seeing very strong venture and growth capital flowing into our businesses here this year in Chicago. I want to give you a couple other data points that I think are important. People worry about what's happening and are we keeping people employed. As of today, we have 20 cranes that are up all across Chicagoland, 6 alone in the Fulton Market District. And a labor leader recently remarked to me, which I hadn't thought about, we don't see protests at construction sites across Chicago. And the reason is everybody's working. That's a good thing and a great statement about our city. A little bit about Chicago city finances. We recently refinanced our debt at O'Hare. We were 4 times oversubscribed. And the savings that we got from that refinancing are going to fund T5 and the runways at O'Hare, which is another big, important economic driver. Revenue surplus for 2021 alone for the city of Chicago. Are you ready for this number? $451 million. And we're projected for 22 to be $134 million. Why is that important? Because if you live in the city of Chicago, as a taxpayer, we're saving you a lot of money because our economy has come roaring back, and we're using those surpluses to prepay our pension obligations. So what we've been doing historically is paying, if we paid it all, we paid the bare minimum. So think of the pension debt as a credit card. We're paying that minimum monthly, and what we want to do is make sure that we start paying off the principal, and by prepaying $242 million of pension debt, we are prepaying and making sure that our pensions, the 4 that have historically been underfunded, we're bringing them up to their funding levels. That's important as well. Last thing that I want to, you can clap for that. There's a lot of great things that are happening all over Chicago economy, and we'll talk to our speakers today about that. But one thing that I do want to put on your radar is something called quantum computing. Quantum computing is the wave of the future. It will fundamentally change the way that we live our lives, certainly the way that we access information, and the way the companies are able to communicate with each other, and as individuals, the way that we're able to communicate. 40 cents of every federal dollar being spent on quantum computing is being spent in Chicago and the surrounding area. So make sure you learn about quantum computing, because this is the next big thing in our economy. So with that, and hearing all the good news about our economy, my question to the panelists are, Chicago, hellhole or not? Discuss. Of course, I'm kidding. But it is important that people recognize the great things that are happening in our economy. And we're in polite company, so I won't say the word that I would normally use. But we can't let anybody talk smack about Chicago and what we're doing. So let me start the questions with this. There's often a conversation about, well, you can't invest in the neighborhoods because if you do, you're going to take your eye off the downtown. I feel like we prove over and over again that that's a false dichotomy. But I think it's for you all to tell us, and I'll start with you, Roger, Tell us about where you invested in the city of Chicago, and what were the major factors that you considered in making your investment?
Sure. First, thank you, Mayor, for everything you do for the city, and it's great to hear all those highlights. So for Discover, for our whole history, we've been in the Chicagoland area, but most of it out in the suburbs in Riverwoods. And so about 8 years ago, we built a downtown office. Before the pandemic, it was largely a touchdown space for our suburban employees or those who lived in the city. But more recently, we're turning it into a data and analytics hub. And just to give you an example of how Chicago attracts talent, we started with our first class of 75 people, all very hot jobs in terms of math, statistics. We made people relocate to Chicago. We're making them come into the office 3 days a week. The things that you hear no one wants to do anymore. We had 1,500 applications from all across the country for those 75 positions, and we're going to build out from there. So investing in the city, but we also want to do our part for those parts of our city that through the systemic bias in corporate site selection have been overlooked, have not had that same opportunity for decades. And so we built a call center on the south side in Chatham. That's now 500 employees, and we've actually launched our first 3 technology teams there. So not just call center jobs, but technology jobs around robotic process automation, supporting ServiceNow, supporting Salesforce. So I would say for Discover, we are all in on Chicago.
So Roger's being very modest. Let me tell you a little bit more about the story. They took an abandoned big box store in the Chatham neighborhood and put in these jobs. And I will tell you, when we did the, soft opening a year plus ago, I think this is one of the most remarkable events that I've been to. Hiring from the neighborhood, taking what was, I think, a deep psychological wound of the Chatham community that lost that big box, and replacing it with a lot of hope, a lot of jobs. And we were just there for the hard opening, and what we found is many of the people that were hired in those early days have now been promoted 1, 2, and multiple times. And I will tell you, that is a very happy workplace. So well done. And thank you for choosing Chicago. Karen, let me turn to you a same question. What were the factors that you took into consideration in thinking about making a big investment here in Chicago?
So, look, we love Chicago. Googlers have been very happy here. We've continued to grow. We first opened an office in 2000, and we've had great luck finding exceptional talent. We have a very diverse workforce here, both functionally diverse and diverse within our teams, and we think that we continue to see a bright future for our time here in Chicago. We recently announced that we were going to purchase the Thompson Center, and we thought it was a great opportunity to continue to build in the city and the center. We saw the revitalization opportunity that we saw in the West Loop at the time we moved there 7 years ago. And one of the amazing things about the Thompson Center that I understood but have had so many people stop me on the street and thank me is the transit hub. So all 6 lines of the L go into that building, and that's been a remarkable message for the city to show our commitment and how serious we are about equity.
So 3,000 to 5,000 new jobs, not relocating the folks from Fulton Market, but to the Thompson Center. And I believe that it's the largest corporate expansion in the history of downtown Chicago. So thank you for that. And Maurice, a similar question. You've had now plenty of time to practice your answer.
Well, they're picking out the good answers, man.
There you go.
Yeah. So I take a different spin on it because I agree with my colleagues here on the reason that you make an investment in Chicago. But, at the simplest level, investing in Chicago is investing in our company. What's good for society, what's good for the communities in Chicago is good for us. And what we have done in every way is that when we have to do something anyways, we look inside of our company and say, are there ways to have a multiplier effect? Can you amplify communities? That led us to make our investments in the southwest side, which we thank you, Mayor, for supporting us there. Led us to make the investments in South Lawndale and Pilsen for all the same reasons. Is that we know that a stronger community means it amplifies all the businesses around it, and the community is stronger when everybody can participate in it. And it's actually good for our business. So commerce is good, the city is strong, we're strong, we think we're doing something good, and we're very, very proud of it.
Thank you. So I still call them Blue Cross Blue Shield, you'll pardon me. Took another abandoned big box store on the far south side in the Morgan Park neighborhood and made this investment really at the height of COVID. We had to do the opening outside. Tell us a little bit about how that center has evolved and what you've seen, both in terms of the people that have come to get healthcare services there, but also your employee base.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, we did open it in the height of COVID. A lot of things were happening in the city when you came out to see us, Mayor, and we appreciate that. We took an abandoned retail store as well.
We're not allowed to say the name.
Yeah, I understand. We redesigned the space, and there was a couple of tenets in that. One is that just because you work in not outside of the central business district, mean that your work experience shouldn't be no different. We redesigned the space. We were very intentional about having a customer, I should say employee experience, a customer experience, irrespective of where you work. We hired from the communities very intentionally. We hired quality jobs, looking for quality jobs. We provided training. We think it's very durable. We wanted people to be able to work somewhere close, be very proud of where they work, and have successful careers, similar to what my colleagues are doing here on the stage. And so that's going very well. We are targeting a little over 500 jobs there. We've already hired over 400 jobs there, Mayor. And we see this as a great model. On the front end of our call center, or customer service center, we have a neighborhood center. It's designed to engage the community in thoughtful conversations, whatever it is. We like it to be about health, but we know that the communities need a lot more of that. And so in our design, we wanted the communities to have this access, a pathway to healthcare, access to healthcare, but we also wanted them to have a place for safe, thoughtful engagement. And that we know has been activated. So we offer a lot there for our employees and also for the members of the community, irrespective if they're customers of ours, because we know that a stronger community is a stronger Blue Cross for sure.
That's great. That's great. Let me ask you all the obvious question. You're investing in the city of Chicago, where a lot of people that don't live in our city, and particularly folks on the national thing, think, oh, Chicago, it's too dangerous. It's the murder capital of the U.S., which, by the way, folks, it's not. But why make that investment, and what, if anything, have you done to assure your workforce that coming to work in the city of Chicago not only is safe, but they're going to have very fulfilled employment opportunities? Why don't I start with Karen?
Look, we do a lot of things to make sure that our Googlers are both mentally and physically safe. We create flexibility within the workforce. We have resources. And our Googlers have been really happy here. So it hasn't been a challenge for us to staff. Occasionally there are neighborhood challenges that any citizen might be concerned by. We support them during that time. We have lots of mass transit and pickups and shuttles and things like that. But we've had a really positive experience. It is not something I've had to manage in a larger Google discussion. In terms of the city, we see the city as a great opportunity to get very highly educated talent and diverse, and like I said, very satisfied. So it hasn't been a challenge for us.
That's great. Roger?
So for us, in the Chatham location, close to 90% of the people live within 5 miles. So we are hiring from the community, and for the first time, and I think this is something that only large companies can do, is bring jobs at scale to the community. It makes a huge difference. I had one of our employees tell me that he can be a better father because instead of having an hour-and-a-half commute each way, he can drop his daughter off at school before coming into work. So these are people from Chicago who already live there, who are delighted to have the opportunity to work in their neighborhood, something that so many of us take for granted. but hasn't been equally distributed. And I think that's part of why we've brought in an amazing workforce, but it also is now our top performing call center across the entire country, which is, I'm not sure what people expected from the south side of Chicago.
That's great to hear. And Maurice, what about you? How are you managing the "is it safe" question with your investments here in Chicago?
You know, that doesn't come up as much, Mayor. It's certainly on the news, but it's not as, you know, we don't feel that in a very pronounced way. You know, Chicago, as you mentioned when your opening remarks, is a very diverse city on every front, diverse economy, diverse people. But what it is resilient, hardworking families all throughout the cities. And you feel that in our company. We have a lot of long-tenured employees, 20 years, 30 years, 35 years in the company. Their families oftentimes work there. And so we feel that. We feel that people want just what everybody wants, security and opportunity, more so than anything else. And when we do that, you know, we find employees. We find employees that want to do great things for their communities and for themselves. So that's been more what we're focused on.
So a consistent thread in the conversation so far is about making sure that you've got the right talent, finding that talent here within the city or elsewhere. You may know this, but at any given time, there are about 200,000 undergrads and graduate students in Chicago amongst our various colleges and university, which is a pretty remarkable number. And I guess I want to ask each of you, what are you doing to connect up with that talent, and what can we as a city government do to help you connect up to that talent that exists right now, today, in the city of Chicago? Maurice, you want to take that first?
Let me think about that. You know, I think we should continue to promote the virtues of the city. The city is very rich culturally. The city has great educational institutions. The city has great cultural institutions. The city is fun. And it's a city of hardworking, resilient families. You know, anybody who's moved to the city or lived in the city find many of their best friends here and have stayed for a reason. I think we continue to promote and amplify the virtues of the city. I think that really shows the strength of the city. And when you look around downtown, look around the neighborhoods, it is pretty amazing. And I know that when we talk about that more, we add the data to it more, bring transparency to it more, I think people really find the city to be what it is. It's really incredible.
That's great.
Similarly, we don't, attracting talent has not been a challenge for us. It's a great cost of living. We actually find, coming out of COVID, we've expanded some of our location principles as a broader company. We've had a lot of people transfer into Chicago from the coast with existing Googlers that wanted to move, and for all the reasons we know this city is great. And then we've also been able to attract new talent, so that hasn't really been a challenge. What we do think about is how do we create on-ramps to high-paying tech jobs for people who maybe aren't college educated, or people who need some reskilling or upskilling. So we have a Google certification program, Grow with Google. We've worked with the mayor's office, we've worked in the region to make that accessible to people, and also work with community organizations like CBO Collective and others that are working on getting connections to those kinds of high-tech jobs. And I think that's a great opportunity to expand the workforce as well.
That's great. Roger?
And for us, a lot of our employees may not have a college degree, so we fund from day one 100% of the costs to get a college degree. And we've got a great partnership with Chicago State, a wonderful institution right down the street. And so for us, it might be a different type of partnership, but it's working out great. And as you think about it, it's not just the institutions we have here in Chicago, right? The kids from Wisconsin, they're not stopping in Madison, they're not stopping in Milwaukee. They want to come here, right? Same with Michigan, same with Purdue. I don't think there's any city that has so many great schools either within the city or in the surrounding area. And again, the city sells itself. I mean, this is where the people want to come.
And I would just add to that, Mayor, telling the stories of people from Chicago who've found their path here, I think is pretty powerful. I will tell you, I'm one of those stories. I started here as an intern in our company, and I've been there for 29 years. I just think telling those stories inside the company and in terms of what it could look like on the other side really makes a difference.
Well, that's a pretty impressive story from intern to CEO. Make sure, Michael Fastnack of World Business Chicago, let's make sure we capture that story and we tell it over and over again. Let me shift gears a little bit and ask you to project out, what do you see, expect to see in the workforce? Obviously, there's been a lot of transition, particularly over these last couple of years of going to all remote, then coming back on some hybrid. I haven't talked to a CEO that says, yeah, we're coming back all 5 days. I think those days probably are over for at least for the foreseeable future. What do you see as the biggest challenges and needs of your workforce in the short term and intermediate term?
So, our core is probably in the office 3 days, work from home 2 days. In the Chatham Center, everyone comes in full time. And part of it is we've created an environment, the mayor talked about it, we have free food. People like coming into work, and again, it's easy to get there from the surrounding communities. So, I totally agree. We won't go back to 5 days. On the other hand, I think pure remote is not working out as well as many people think, especially for those who are earlier in their careers. And I talked earlier, the number of applicants we had, they wanted to be in the office, right? Learning from their peers, learning from their managers. And so I think that the companies that navigate it successfully, that create that hybrid culture that still has the flexibility that I think we all came to appreciate during the pandemic, those will be the ones that win. And there will be always a role for great cities like Chicago.
Karen, what are you seeing as some of the challenges or need to adapt in the short term and the intermediate term and concerns of your workforce?
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge right now is hybrid's here to stay, and I think right now people are struggling to understand what are the best ways to be hybrid. And we were talking before we came up on stage about some of this, and some of it is technical challenges around, well, if I've got some people at home and some people in the office, is it a consistent experience, and how do I understand all the technology that's available to do that? And places like Google, we continue to invest in and test the best ways so that people feel included even when they're working from home for whatever reason. We have a sort of a 3-2 goal as well, where there's flexibility around that. We do have some fully remote and we have some fully in the office roles as well, and you can navigate around those. But we also try to look at policies that are maybe flexible and sort of current around how people are experiencing life today. So we have a work from anywhere week. So you can have 4 weeks a year where you can work from anywhere, which means you can visit your family for the holidays and stay an extra week and get fed by mom, or you can, go to, a place in another part of the country for some period of time, and then you work remotely during those few times. And just that added flexibility, that obviously is an easy choice for us to make. It gives people more license over their lives, and I think those kinds of small thoughts and decisions can be really valuable to the employee base as they are trying to navigate this. All of these changes.
Yeah, and I agree. I think both are true. I believe that we're going to have to continue with the flexibility, and also we know there's a need or a desire for collaboration and innovation that comes through when people are getting together. And like all the other companies, we're doing the same. We think there's a role for fully remote jobs. We think there's a role for hybrid jobs, and we're still in the early learning phases of how to make this work. We think that the tools are going to get better, the processes are going to get better, the understanding is going to get better as we go farther down the line. But we think there's a role for both. And it doesn't mean that if you start one way that you don't end up another way, So.
And I think optimizing for whichever location you're in, whether you're at home and the kind of work that is best in that environment, or you're in the office, you want to make sure your team or that sort of innovation collaboration space is available to you at the same time. And so some of that is establishing norms and getting back into working together. But personally, for me, I love the hybrid. I think it's one of the best outcomes of the learning that we all had as leaders in post-COVID.
Well, it's interesting because if I go back and mark the conversations that I've had with CEOs, say starting sometimes in 2021, I think most people thought, well, we'll be back to some close to 5 day a week. And then we had the Delta surge. And they said, all right, well, let's put it off to January. And then we had the Omicron surge. And I think a lot of people are just feeling like, I don't feel comfortable, because a lot of workplaces were moving pre-pandemic to kind of what I'll call the cubicle farms. And I think people are uncomfortable being that close proximity to their neighbor. What I think is interesting over this last year, though, in 2022 in particular, is the conversations at the beginning of this year are very different than where they are now. And so some of the folks that were like, we just have to have maximum flexibility, we're worried about competition, and if we push too hard, people will leave. I'm not hearing that so much anymore. It feels like we're settling into, at least in the short term, what the new normal is going to be. Some kind of hybrid, 3 days versus 5 days. In some instances, if you're like a mean-old mayor, you make people come 4 days a week. But the thing that some of you touched upon it. How are you addressing the building culture within teams when you've got a hybrid workplace? Because I know, I'm a lawyer, and we're like we're way behind when it comes to professional services on basically everything. But some of the best work that I got as a young lawyer was somebody walking down the hall and saying, hey, I just got this new matter in. You want to work with me on it? Hard to do when you got to find the phone number, figure out the Zoom, send an email. So how are you making sure that young people in your organizations are actually getting those kind of experiences that can be career makers?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. And that's part of why we're pushing so hard to have people come back. It is not the same. And to your point, Mayor, it's those casual interactions that are missing, right? Talking to someone after a meeting, walking between meetings, talking to them at the side of a meeting. That I recall how much I learned from my colleagues as well as bosses who took that extra time. And you just find your contacts are so much more limited. So I think even in a hybrid environment, you can try and create periodic events, right, where the whole team comes in and look for other ways to leverage technology and provide those unstructured opportunities. But at the end of the day, it is still not the same. And I think it will be very hard for people who aren't in individual contributor roles to maintain the same career progression as those people who come in. And it is just going to be one of those facts and decisions that people will have to make.
So Karen, same question. How do you manage building that culture and creating a body of work for the younger people in your company?
Yeah, as I listen to your examples, both of you, I think there's one thing to acknowledge, and that is that idea that we're all proximate in the same building has already changed. So I work for a company, have teams all over the world. Yeah. We were already in a hybrid environment. We didn't call it that because you were in different offices, but you were actually not necessarily all in the same room. So you already needed to be able to connect by technology. I think part of culture is the people that are around you. So it's not always the same as your functional team. And so what are the ways that you can make being in the office energizing and entertaining and educational? And sometimes that is bringing in resources, that is planning, and we have a culture club, and so, having the employees themselves think about the ways to do this. We celebrate diversity by recognizing, Hispanic Heritage Month or Asian Pacific Islander Week, whatever the opportunity is. And so that's a fun way that kind of creates some of that casual collision you were talking about. It doesn't always have to be business oriented, because sometimes it's just about meeting with a colleague and understanding what they're working on and being energized by that. Career development is impacted if you are only on a screen and everything is transactional. You don't get to see the interesting other work that the other lawyers are doing or whomever. So think about how you bring that sort of front and center so that the education that your teams are getting is not necessarily a linear path on their career, but it's all of that other stuff that we all benefited from by being able to see. I think you were talking earlier today about being able to see and learn from just being present.
And we don't have the answers yet either. I do agree that it's hard. We still see value in people being together, collaborating. We think innovations come from that. We think learnings come from that. We think opportunities come from that. But it is hard now. I do think that we're all going to get better about how to recreate some of those experiences, but we're still in the early days of it. So for right now, we do think there's a role for being in office some of the time.
So I will share that a couple of things that we have been doing recently is every week we have what we call the mayor's priority meetings, meaning the things that we really need to make progress this year. We bring together most of the cabinet and mid-level staff and up to really talk about how we're doing, and everybody is there, and usually 4 or 5 teams report out every week on that. But at the end of a presentation, and I have to credit my chief of staff, Dr. Sybil Madison, we have questions and connections. And the connections part, I think, is the most interesting piece, because people listen to what their colleagues have said and then offer up suggestions on how that they can help advance that work further, even if they're not directly involved in that work. And that's really where I think a lot of the innovation is happening, and has been, I think, a phenomenal experience for us. The other thing that we try to do is when we have all staff meetings, we really encourage the junior members of the staff to be the ones that are leading the discussion, to report out about what a particular team is doing. One, to give them confidence and opportunity, but also I think it encourages the junior staff to see the possibilities of what it means to actually be involved in the work and take the lead. Because look, the truth is, we know, and I've been a junior staffer myself, a lot of the work is happening at that level anyway. It's just a senior person who steps in front and takes the credit. But this is an opportunity to really help build that confidence in the portfolio of the junior staffs. And I saw a lot of head nods in the audience, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me go back to a point that we touched briefly on earlier. You know that a big part of the work that I've really tried to accomplish is making sure that we see the entirety of our city, that we're investing in neighborhoods that have historically been disinvested in. And all of you have done that in various ways. Tell me, share with the audience, if you would, what you would say to the CEOs that are out there that are on the fence, that feel like, if I go south of Roosevelt Road or I go west of Ashland, I don't know what's going to happen. Help them think about the city in a different way, and making those investments in neighborhoods like Chatham or Morgan Park, or Joe Mansueto has made a big investment in a building called the Terminal in West Humboldt Park. What would you say to your colleagues in the CEO world about why it's important to see the whole city and not take risk, but take and do investments in these neighborhoods? Roger, you want to start?
So, we have gotten so much more out of this as a company than the Chatham community. And some of the advice we got, and Maurice and his team were incredibly helpful, Samir on your team was incredibly helpful, was you want to be invited in to these communities. And so I mentioned it's our top performing call center, right? All our other call centers are in the US. It's something we take very seriously. The attrition is much lower, speed to proficiency is higher, but it's also changed how we do business, right? Every company talks about diversity, equity, inclusion, but by being in these communities, you learn how to do business differently. Everything from hiring and the channels we use to acquire talent, to a focus on, for every single candidate, not how can I exclude them, how can I disqualify them, but how can I qualify that candidate to have them join Discover? How we work with vendors, right? For operating our facility, we're at 97% of the spend with minority and women-owned businesses. But as one of the aldermen kindly told us, Chatham is not a minority community, it's a black community. And so that's why we focused further. 37% of the spend is with black contractors. And you've got to work harder but then you have the impact. So a local electrician didn't have the low voltage licenses he needed. We worked with him to get them, and not only did he do great work for us, he now has that and can go out and drive business. So you can do that impact, and I'll end this with the last, probably silliest example. You know, every big company has a corporate catalog where you have your, for us, Discover branded merchandise. And one of our employees pointed out that it sort of looked like a Lake Forest Pro Shop as you think about what we had, right? I mean, not that Land's End isn't a great brand in Patagonia. So we are working with some South Side designers on our own streetwear. And I will let you know when we have a drop. It's going to be huge, but we're using design.
I'm excited about the new swag.
Yeah, exactly. And so even silly things like that are now changing forever how Discover does business.
That's great. And I'm going to take the opportunity. Go ahead and stand up, Watis. Watis is the manager of the call center, and I got to tell you, if there's a better person who's more enthusiastic, who keeps people pumped up, and has tremendous, tremendous pride in the employees that come in there every single day, she's the one. So thank you for what you're doing. And I think I just learned we lured you back from Phoenix. And on a day like today, of course, we're all questioning our sanity. But thank you for coming back home. Maurice, what's your advice to the CEOs who are saying, but should we really go on the south and west side?
I start off where I began the conversation. If you believe that the city is stronger when everybody has an opportunity to participate, there's no reason not to go. If you believe, and I can tell you, on all parts of the city, all 77 neighborhoods have very smart, very committed, very resilient people. This is your talent of the future. They're willing to be with you. They're with us all the way. They want to see us successful, so in turn that we can provide quality careers for them. And we find them there. And the experience, while it can be different, but it doesn't have to be a lesser experience. We can create an experience that is appropriate for each one of those areas that we're participating in. So you're going to get employees, smart, talented employees that are committed to your organization, and you know that your organization is participating in the economy. If the economy is stronger, then we all get better as a result of that. So I would say you should go.
That's great. So Karen, why Chicago, of all places?
Gosh, as I've said, we love Chicago. It's been a great city. You can get out of school, buy a house, have a good job, raise a family, do whatever it is you want to do with your personal life. You've got all that opportunity here, and we have, help me with the number, 60-something neighborhoods. You can
77.
Sorry, 77. And the suburbs. Like, there's so much opportunity. The lake's amazing, and so we really do just support and celebrate the quality of life, the diversity of the talent, and we believe strongly that it makes us a better team. To both of your points, we have products that wouldn't exist if you didn't come from a particular point of view in developing them. We can't all shop at the pro shop in Lake Forest. We don't want to, right? The world would be a really boring place if that were the case. So I think Chicago brings all of that and so much more.
So last round, what have you each personally learned from your experience in making a decision to bet on Chicago? Maurice, why don't we start with you?
I learned a lot, but I would say what I'm reminded of is that experience and insights come from all parts of society. Every neighborhood, every individual, and that your company gets stronger and more durable when everybody has an opportunity to participate. So when more people participate, we just end up making better products, making sounder decisions, and also being more respectful all the way around in every thought that we have as a company.
Karen, you want to jump in?
Yeah, do something, right? If you're sitting there trying to figure out what it is, maybe you don't have a call center to build in a new neighborhood, figure out what the assets are that you have and start there. And a lot of times it's your existing employees, and get involved in the communities, get their perspective, invest in startups or a program that is an on-ramp to some future career in your business. And then when you have big opportunities to make a decision like a new call center, do those too. That's been my lesson.
And maybe I can build on both of what Maurice and Karen said, right? I truly believe talent is equally distributed in our city, opportunity isn't. And if you can bring opportunity to those areas that have not seen it, it'll be great. And it'll be great for them. It'll be better for you, for your business. Your employees will be happy, your board will be happy, and you'll be doing the right thing. And so, you know, the second part to that, though, is you will learn and grow and change as a company. And so we didn't need a new call center. The advice and the way Karen put it is just do it, right? There are so many resources out there to help you. Just view it like a business decision, start, and you will be successful. And you'll have great people on your team, like Watis, like Matt next to her, like that want to throw themselves at this project. And you can't lose by investing in Chicago, in particular by investing in the communities on the south and west side of Chicago.
Well said, well said. So we have a lot of great questions that have been coming in. Karen, first one is for you. A person wants to know, can employees take advantage of the work from anywhere policy from other countries?
Yes, it's a global policy for us. And if the question is, can a Chicagoan go abroad for a month? Sure. So that's all. It's a global policy for us.
I think you're going to get a couple resumes
Okay, great.
on the way out the door.
But look, it's an easy idea to steal, so steal with pride if it works for you.
This one is from Ashwin Lad, and it's for each of you. If you were to double down on your Chicago investments, where or how would it be? Who wants to jump in first?
I don't know that yet. I don't know that because I guess we've already doubled down in many ways. So we think that, you know, our investments in Morgan Park, southwest part of the city, we think our investments in Pilsen, we think our investments in South Lawndale are important. We equally think our investments downtown Chicago are important. We, you know, again, it's about all 77 neighborhoods contributing to the success of the company and the success of society. So we haven't studied it beyond that, but we do think that we made smart investments and we're seeing dividends from those investments already.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I will just say for the other two, we just made recent both companies have just made recent announcements, so I think the future's looking bright for both. Let me go to the next question. Somebody's tapping into my phone. This is for me. What keeps me up at night? You know, I will say that there are lots of things that I worry about in my waking hours, right? I worry, of course, about public safety. I worry about making sure that we're on the other side of this global pandemic. I worry about our kids. But I sleep pretty well at night just because I feel like I give the full measure of myself every day, 7 days a week. And I also know that I have to be of good mind and body to be able to get up the next day and do the work. So I amuse myself with sports, although our sports teams this season have not panned out well. My Sox, I'm still mourning that. It's too soon. We'll see what happens with the Bears. I keep telling myself it's a long season. Maybe they'll get better. And then, of course, like everybody, and I won't tell you what, but I indulge in like outrageous, crazy TV. So, but I feel as I sit here today, I feel very optimistic about where we are, particularly given what we've been through. I mean, we've been through hell and back these last 2.5 years. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and I will acknowledge, as many people have told me, I've been dealt a very, very difficult hand. But I also firmly believe you got to play the hand you're dealt. No excuses. You just got to play through and make the best of a tough situation. And the reason we've been able to do what we've, I think, been able to accomplish is because of all of you, because of all the people all across our city who truly love the city and love being from Chicago. That's what keeps me going every single day. Yeah, it's a tough job, no question about it. And people question my sanity, saying, you want to do this again for 4 more years? And I say, hell yeah. And part of that is because the work that we've been able to accomplish, the great civic leaders that we have in our city, second to none anywhere in the country. So I'm getting the nice iPad hook to say we're out of time, but I really appreciate all of you for being here. Appreciate the conversation, and let's keep going. Let's keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.